What's up guys, Deroir here, and welcome to the first official episode of Blackline Economics, a show designed to dig into some of the quirky and interesting aspects about the economic systems and structures that flourish within the world of Guild Wars 2. So without further ado, let's start this series off by talking about stock exchange, a subject that in and of itself can and will carry heavily over into several future episodes, so I figured I'd be wise to start off with it. But first of all, I'd like to mention that there are numerous aspects to understanding the entirety of the subject of stock exchange in real life, and since many of these facets don't actually apply to the in-game world, I'll simply be skipping those that are basically irrelevant to us. Now, in our real world, a share is a small part of a company's capital, which plainly spoken is available for purchase on what is known as the stock market. I use the word purchase in a very liberal way because I know that you don't actually purchase it, you invest and blah blah blah. It's one of those things that we're just gonna skip. Owning a share of a company entitles you, the holder, to a proportion of the profits from that company. Say you own 5% of the shares in a tech company who, over the course of the next 12 months, brings in a profit margin of 25% to their investment. These 25% now represent 100% of the profits, to which you are entitled to 5% of. Now in turn, because the company did significantly better over these 12 months, we can easily assume that the price you paid for your 5% shares now have gone up significantly. Since the value of a share in large is determined by how well a company's profit margin is expected to rise or fall in the future. So in very general terms, the worth of a share is determined by the potential net worth of a company, and any fluctuations in the price of a share are usually due to human fallacies, all of which we may touch on in future episodes, but for now let's stick to the basics. All in all, predicting a company's future is quite a task, given the fact that so many factors have to be accounted for in a real world scenario, but in a virtual game world, the factors aren't so tricky to spot always. So let's talk a little bit about the value of materials and what roles they inherently represent. Now, when I in this video refer to materials in general, I simply mean all the collectible items located in your bank vault, though basically any and all item that can be put on the trading post can be treated as a capital stock, since to a certain degree they all inherit the necessary qualities. That said, let's just agree to talk in more general terms from now on, with the knowledge that anything I say can be utilized on a number of different things and items in Guild Wars 2. Still, collectible materials do possess a very important characteristic that sets them apart from less complex items. Now let's actually talk about what I mean when I refer to materials as a share. This idea has two sides to it. First off, every piece of material represents a possible piece of something craftable, be it account bound or not. It's usually not reversible in the same quantity as the invested amount. Secondly, due to the first point, any material also holds unlimited future potential of being crafted or used for something not yet conceived of, which essentially grants any material the power to possibly fluctuate wildly in price, both positively and negatively, but always in relation to outside interference. This second feature is what fundamentally grants any tradable item or material in the world of Tyria the same properties as a capital share. Of course, there are quite a few differentiating features between the real and the virtual thing, but in general, to effectively navigate the Blackline trading post, this is one of the core concepts we need to grasp. Now, first of all, the most interesting thing to note about the material stock exchange that exists in the world of Tyria is that every piece of material acts both as the capital stock that it is, which I'll get to in a bit, but they're also used as everyday usable goods in and of themselves. Let me explain. The exact thing that defines the price of any given material is the fact that almost every single player at some point during game time will need or simply want a larger quantity of materials of some sort or another than they themselves can just easily acquire. Whether the materials are needed to level up Artificer, cooking, or weaponsmithing, or to craft a new weapon or utility buff to accommodate for the meta changing at an alarming rate, or simply to craft that new shiny armor skin that just came out. And since everyone has equal access to all playable areas, and everyone also has a somewhat equal amount of income of everything within their respective time invested in any given area, most people go to the trading post to speed up the process or sell off their goods to profit off of those who need it more than others. Now, just like any real-world farmer can attempt to increase his potential income over time by spraying his crops with different fertilizers, we, the players, use magic find boosters to boost our own income. But compared to this real-world farmer, within the virtual world, we don't necessarily have to account for the same variables that might render a harvest bad, because for us, butter doesn't melt, flour doesn't get moldy, venom sacs don't rot, and vials of blood don't coagulate. Simply said, there's no obvious expiration date on any of our goods, and so this is where one man's daily usable goods become another man's shareholdings. See, when milk doesn't go bad, you can hoard as much as you want, and when there's a drought or a bad cow flu, the price could easily be determined by supply and demand, which opens the floodgates for those who had been thinking long term. Of course, as mentioned, there are laws of nature and of certain countries that prevent such monopoly from happening. You can't just hoard up life essential goods for a rainy day and then sell it to the highest bidder like you would with a particularly good standing share in a company. Which also means that ArenaNet can't ever put out life essential goods to be tradable. So yeah, there's that. The thing is, these laws don't exactly exist in Tyria, or do they? See, a drought as we know it in real life doesn't really happen the same way in our virtual world as it would in the real world, given the fact that, as we know, ArenaNet rarely messes with the essential drop rates in specific areas, and there's always a new batch of farmers to take over where another left off. Basically, when you use any material, be it large bones or lemons, they're removed from the economy, just as any piece of gear is whenever it's soul bound or account bound. So what happens when a major percentage of the player base decides that they need this one thing, which requires a whole bunch of materials to make, possibly more than the economy is ready to handle? Well, a drought happens, or so at least that's how I like to refer to it. Basically, the act of introducing any new thing into Tyria is the same as having a company launch a new seasonal collection or show off this new amazing thing they made. The price of the company's shares will fluctuate, either positively or negatively, depending on the initial reception by the general public. If something is well received, there's a bigger likelihood that the profit margin for that specific company will increase significantly, thus making it a lot more interesting to have a share of that profit. Meaning either you already have a fair share of set material and then you can simply watch as the price goes up, or you're on the other side of the fence with no current investment in that specific material. This last one leaves you with the option of either waiting it out, hoping the price might go down, or you could just be in camp desperate and simply end up throwing huge amounts of gold at other shareholders to get a piece of the pie as fast as possible. But what happens when a brand new material is introduced? Take for example the recently introduced Madre back piece, which required a million different things, many of which were simply account bound or otherwise just led you on a wild hunt for stuff. But Madre also required huge amounts of one specific material. It wasn't account bound and could readily be traded. I'm of course talking about Foxfire clusters. This new material was introduced at the same time as the back piece and was actually incorporated into people's daily gathering routes, which then increased people's incentive to actually complete said gathering routes. What was interesting about this whole event was seeing just how the price fluctuated. Essentially, when a completely new ware is put on the market, it usually follows one of two trends. Either the general public likes and wants whatever this new thing is or can bring, which takes it on a path similar to Foxfire's, where the price immediately skyrockets as general interest is piqued, curves downward slightly as people realize how the material is actually obtained, and then continues along a solid flat line with sporadic spikes of interest, which can be caused by a number of different reasons. Or if the general public dislikes the item or finds it to simply not be worth their time, we see a path similar to the Eternal Sands focus. As the item was launched, the price skyrockets due to the lucky few firstcomers usually not realizing what the drop rate of said item is compared to its future popularity or lack thereof, which can then result in a huge price dive. Price trends can be discussed in great length and has several other factors to it than the simple numbers I just showed you, but either way, if you want whatever new thing is offered, it's generally a wise decision to simply wait for a little while, though that might also backfire. Now, some of you may be skeptical as to the reason why I specifically mentioned the story about Madre. Well, it's actually intended as a cautionary tale, since there's an expansion coming up soon, which inevitably will bring along numerous new armor pieces, weapon skins, foods, boosters, and whatnot, and with that comes the likelihood that ArenaNet also adds brand new materials. And at the same time, every single piece of existing material stands at a crossroad. Heart of Thorns may or may not provide maps, events, or challenges that offer up rewards in the form of materials, just like the Silver Waste made the price of Venom Sacks and Fangs plummet. All I'll say is that I personally prefer to have my assets invested compared to simply liquefying any and all materials and items into raw coins susceptible to inflation. The question will always be whether you invested correctly or not. Now, as I indicated at the beginning of this video, the topic of capital share is one that we need to understand so that in the future we may better be able to talk about what it means to manipulate this all-encompassing marketplace, why the Black Lion Trading Company takes their fair share of all profits, and what roles ArenaNet may or may not play in all of this. That said, we might not talk about how to manipulate the market for obvious reasons, but I guess in and of itself that's a subject for another time. Now tell me guys, what is your worst investment ever? I'd love to hear your stories. So tell me in the comment section down below. But for now, that's all I had for you guys this time. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, I will see you in the mists.